Welcome to Audiorama Onda Lectora. Make yourself comfortable, listen, and enjoy this audiobook and Unlocking Wealth, The Formula for Financial Success, by George Samuel Clason.
The Formula for Financial Success. George Samuel Clason. When someone is lucky, the extent of their good fortune is unpredictable. Throw someone into the Euphrates River, and most likely, he will emerge swimming with a pearl in his hand. Babylonian proverb. The longing for fortune is universal, and is as powerful in the hearts of people, some 4,000 years ago, in ancient Babylon, as it is in the hearts of people today. We all hope to be graced by the capricious goddess of fortune. Is there any way to meet her and attract, not only her favorable attention, but also her generous favors? Is there a way to attract good luck? That is precisely what the men of ancient Babylon would want to know. That is exactly what they decided to find out. They were shrewd men, and very sharp thinkers. That explains why their city became the richest and most powerful of its time, in that distant past. They had no schools or colleges, but they had a very practical center of learning. Among the towers of Babylon there was one, which had the same importance as the king's palace, the hanging gardens and the temples of the gods. In the history books it is hardly mentioned, but it exerted a powerful influence on the thinking of the time. This building was the temple of learning, where the wisdom of the past was exposed by teachers of the past, and where topics of popular interest were discussed in open seating. Within its walls, all men met as equals. The humblest of slaves could discuss with impunity the opinions of a prince of the royal house. Among the many who frequented the Temple of Learning, there was a wealthy sage named Arcad, known as the richest man in Babylon. He had his own special room, where almost any evening a group of men, some old, some very young, but mostly middle-aged, would gather to discuss and argue interesting topics. Let us imagine the scene, to test whether they have the ability to attract good fortune to them. The sun had just set like a great red ball of fire, shining through the haze of the desert dust, when Arcad went to his usual platform. There were already 4 dozen men awaiting his arrival, reclining, on their little carpets spread out on the ground. Still more were arriving. "What are we going to talk about today?" asked Arcad. After a brief hesitation, a tall weaver of cloth addressed him, rising, as was customary. "I have a subject which I should like to have discussed, but I hesitate to offer it, lest it should seem ridiculous to you, Arcad, nor to my good friends here." On being urged to offer it, both by Arcad and the others, he continued, "I have been lucky today, for I have found a bag, in which there are gold pieces. To continue to be lucky is my great desire, and I feel that all men share with me this desire. I suggest that we discuss how to attract good luck, so that we may discover how to make it come to you." "A very interesting subject has been offered," commented Arcad, "one very worthy of our discussion. For some men, good luck is nothing more than a chance occurrence that, like an accident, can happen to one without purpose or reason. Others believe that the generous goddess of good luck is ready to reward with abundant gifts those who please her. What do you think, my friends? Shall we explore whether there are methods, so that good luck may visit each of us?" "Yes, of course, and very much so," replied the growing group of avid listeners. Then, Arcad continued, "To begin our discussion, let us first listen to those among us, who have enjoyed similar experiences, to those of the weaver of cloth, in finding or receiving without effort on their part, valuable treasures or jewels." There was a pause, in which they all looked around, waiting for someone to respond, but no one did. "Let no one answer," then said Arcad, "it must be rare to have this kind of good luck. Who is now going to suggest where we should continue our search?" "I'll do it," said a decently dressed young man, as he stood up. When a man speaks of luck, is it not natural that his thoughts should turn to the tables of profit? Is it not there that we find many men, courting the favor of the goddess, in the hope that she will bless them with rich gains. When he sat down again, a voice said to him, "Don't stop, continue your story. Tell us, did you find favor with the goddess in games of chance? Did you turn the dice red side up, and fill your purse at the croupier's expense? Or did you let the blue sides peek up, and the croupier take your silver coins?" The young man joined in a good-natured laughter, and then replied, "No, I am loath to admit that she seemed not to know that I was there. But, what about the rest of you? Have you found her waiting about those places, and so round the cubes to your advantage? We are anxious to listen and to learn." "A wise beginning," said Arcad. "We gather here, in order to consider all aspects of every question. To ignore the gambling table would be to overlook, an instinct common to most men, a love of taking a chance on a small amount of silver, in the hope of winning a lot of gold." "That reminds me of yesterday's races," said another listener. "If the goddess frequents the gaming tables, she certainly does not overlook the races, where golden chariots and sparkling horses offer much more excitement. Tell us honestly, Arcad, did she whisper to you to bet on those gray horses of Nineveh? Yesterday I was standing right behind you, and I could hardly believe my ears, when I heard you bet on the grays. You know too, as well as any of us, that no team in all of Syria can beat our beloved bays in a fair race. Did the goddess whisper that you bet on the grays, because at the last turn the black would stumble, and so interfere with our bays, that the grays would win the race and score an undeserved victory?" Arcad smiled indulgently at the joke. "What reason have we to think that the good goddess would be so interested in any man's wager, in a horse race? To me she is a goddess of love and dignity whose pleasure is to help the needy, and reward the deserving. I seek to find her not at the gaming tables or at the races, where men lose more than they win, but in other places, where the actions of men are more valuable and more worthy of reward. In tilling the soil, in trade, in all the occupations of man, there is the opportunity of making a profit from his exertions and his transactions. Perhaps not all the time he may be rewarded, for sometimes his judgment may be erroneous, and at other times the winds and weather may defeat his efforts. However, if you persist, you can usually expect to make a profit. This is so because the chances of profit are always in his favor. But when a man entertains himself with games, the situation is reversed, since the chances of profit are always against him, and in favor of the keeper of the game. The game is arranged in such a way that it will always favor the keeper. It is a business in which he plans to make a liberal profit for himself from the coins wagered by the players. Few players realize how certain the gatekeeper's winnings are, and how uncertain their own chances of winning are. For example, consider the bets placed on the cube. Each time it is thrown, we bet on which side will be higher. If it is the red side, the master of the game pays us 4 times our bet, but if any of the other 5 come out on top, we lose our bet. Thus, the figures show that for each throw, we have 5 chances to lose, but since red pays 4 for 1, we have 4 chances to win. In a single night, the master of the game can expect to keep 1/5 of all the coins wagered. Can a man expect to win more than now and then, against odds so arranged, in which he must lose 1/5 of all his bets? Yet, some men sometimes win large sums, said one of the listeners. That's right, they do, commented Arcad to him. Realizing this, the question arises to me, whether the money obtained in that way brings permanent value to those who are so fortunate. Among my acquaintances are many of the successful men of Babylon, and yet, I cannot name a single one who has started his success from such a source. You, who are assembled here tonight, know many more of our leading citizens. For me it would be very interesting to know how many of our prosperous citizens can attribute to the gaming tables their start in success. Suppose, let each of you speak of those you know. What do you say? After a prolonged silence, one man ventured to say, do you include in your inquiry the keepers of the house? If you think of no one else, replied Arcad. If none of you can think of anything else, what tell yourselves? Are there any consistent winners with us? Dude advise such a source for your income? His challenge was answered by a series of groans, coming from the rear, which spread amid much laughter. It seems that we do not seek good luck in the places frequented by the goddess, he continued. Therefore, we must explore other fields. We have not found her in collecting lost wallets, nor have we found her rolling the gambling tables. As for the races, I must confess that I have lost many more coins there than I have won. Now suppose we consider our trades and business. Is it not natural that if we conclude a profitable transaction, we should not consider it good luck, but a just reward for our exertions? I am inclined to think that we may be overlooking the gifts of the goddess. Perhaps she actually assists us when we fail to appreciate her generosity. Who can suggest a deeper discussion? At that moment, an elderly merchant stood up, smoothing his gentle white robe, and said, with your permission, Honorable Arcad and my friends, I make a suggestion. If, as you have said, we attribute to our own industry and skill the credit of our commercial success, why not consider the successes which we almost enjoyed, but which escaped us? Events that would have been very profitable, would have been rare examples of good fortune, had they actually occurred. Since they did not come to pass, we cannot consider them as our just rewards. Surely many men here have such experiences to relate. This is a wise approach, Arcad approved. Who among you has had good fortune within his reach, only to see it slip away? Many hands were raised, including that of the merchant. Arcad directed him to speak. As you suggested this approach, we would like to hear it first. I will gladly tell a story, he continued, which illustrates how close a man can approach good fortune, and how blindly he can let it slip away, to his loss and subsequent regret. Many years ago, when I was a young man, and newly married and with a good income, my father came one day, and motivated me to make an investment. The son of one of his good friends had noticed a vacant lot, not far away, from the outer walls of our city. It was located at the top of the canal, where the water did not reach. The son of my father's friend had a plan to buy this land, build 3 large water wheels, which could be driven by oxen, and thus raise the life-giving waters to the fertile land. Once this was done, he planned to divide it into small tracts, and sell it to the residents of the city, to make their orchards. The son of my father's friend did not possess enough gold to carry out such an enterprise, just as I was a young man earning a good sum. His father, like mine, was a man of large family, and of small means. Therefore, he decided to interest a group of men, to enter the company with him. The group was to consist of 12, each of whom was to earn money, and agree to 1/10 of their earnings in the enterprise, until the land was ready for sale. Then, all would share fairly in the profits, in proportion to their investment. You, my son, my father said to me, you are already in your youth. It is my deep desire, that you begin to build up a valuable estate for me, so that you may become respected among men. I wish you to benefit from the knowledge, from my mistakes and reflections. Father, this is what I desire most, I replied. Then, I advise you this, do what I should have done at your age. Of your earnings, keep 1/10 part, to put it into favorable investments. With this 1/10 part of your earnings, and what is also earned, you will be able before you reach my age, to accumulate for yourself a valuable patrimony. Your words are words of wisdom, my father. I desire riches very much, however, there are many uses to which my earnings are destined. Therefore, I do not hesitate to do as you advise. I am young, there is plenty of time. So thought I at your age, though many years have passed, and I have not yet made the beginning. We live in a different age, my father. I will avoid your mistakes. Opportunity is before you, my son. It offers you an opportunity that can lead you to riches. I beg you not to delay, go tomorrow to see the son of my friend, and negotiate with him the payment of 10% of his profits on this investment. Suddenly, the next day, opportunity waits for no one. Today it is here, but soon it will be gone. So therefore, don't delay. Despite my father's advice, I had doubts. There were beautiful new robes, which had just been brought by merchants from the East, robes of such richness and beauty, that my good wife and I felt that we should own one each. If I agreed to pay a tenth of my earnings to the company, we would have to deprive ourselves of these and other pleasures, which we deeply desired. I delayed the decision until it was too late, and regretted it later. The company turned out to be more profitable than any man had prophesied. This is my story, in which I show how I allowed good luck to slip away from me. In this story, we see how good luck waits for man to accept the opportunity. A desert brown man commented, "For the construction of a heritage, there must always be a beginning. That beginning may be a few pieces of gold or silver, which a man diverts from his earnings, to make his first investment. I myself am the owner of many flocks. The beginning of my herds, I made when I was a mere boy, and bought with a piece of silver a young calf. This, being the beginning of my wealth, was of great importance to me. To take the first step in building up an estate, is the best luck a man can have. For all men, that first step, which changes them from men who earn by their own labor, to men who get dividends from the profits of their gold, is very important. Fortunately, some do it when they are young, and therefore, surpass in financial success, those who do it later, or those unfortunate men, like the father of this merchant who never did it. If our friend the merchant had taken this step in his young age, when this opportunity was presented to him, today he would be blessed with many more of this world's goods. If the good fortune of our friend, the cloth weaver, makes him take that step at this time, it will indeed be but the beginning of a much greater good fortune." "Thank you, I like to talk too." A stranger from another country stood up. "I am Syrian, and I do not speak your language very well. I wish to place this friend, the merchant, a name. Perhaps you think this name is not polite, but I want to call him so. Although unfortunately, I do not know his word. If I call him in Syriac, you will not understand. Please, some good gentleman, tell me that correct name by which the man is called, who stops doing those things, which could be good for him." "Procrastinator," pronounced a voice from the concurrence. "Exactly," exclaimed the Syrian enthusiastically, waving his hands. "This term accurately reflects his nature, for he does not take advantage of opportunities when they present themselves. Instead, he procrastinates and says, 'Right now, I have other priorities.' But, sorry to say goodbye to talk, as opportunity, do not wait for such slow individuals. She thinks her name wishes to be lucky. She will take a quick step. Any man who does not take a quick step when opportunity comes, is a great procrastinator, like our friend this merchant." The merchant rose and bowed willingly, in response to the laughter. "My admiration for you, stranger at our doors, who does not hesitate to speak the truth. And now, let us hear another story of opportunity. Who has for us another experience?" Arcad asked. "Me," answered a middle-aged man in a red robe. "I am a buyer of animals, mostly camels and horses. Sometimes I also buy sheep and goats. The story I am about to tell, tells truthfully how the opportunity presented itself one night, when I least expected it. Perhaps for this reason I let it slip away. Of these you will be the judge. Returning to the city one night, after a disheartening journey of 10 days in search of camels, I was very angry, to find the gates of the city closed and locked, while my slaves spread our tent for the night, which it seemed we were going to spend with little food and no water. I was approached by an old farmer who, like us, was locked outside. 'Honorable sir,' he said to me, by your appearance I judge that you are a buyer. If so, I should very much like to sell you the excellent flock of sheep, which you have just bred. Unfortunately, my good wife is very ill with fever, and I must return with all haste. Buy my sheep, that I and my slaves may ride on our camels, and return without delay. It was so dark that I could not see his flock, but from the bleating, I knew it must be large. After I had wasted 10 days, looking for camels I could not find, I was glad to bargain with him. In his anxiety, he said a very reasonable price, and I accepted, knowing well that my slaves could drive the herd through the city gates in the morning, and sell it at a considerable profit. The bargain being concluded, I called my slaves to bring torches, and we could count the flock, which the farmer declared to be 900 sheep. I will not burden you, my friends, with a description of our difficulty, in trying to count so many thirsty, restless, milling sheep. It proved to be an impossible task, therefore, I bluntly informed the farmer that I would count them at daybreak, and pay him then. Please, most honorable sir, he begged, pay me only 2/3 of the price tonight, and so I can be on my way. I will leave my most intelligent and educated slave, to help me make out the bill in the morning. He is trustworthy, and you can pay him the rest. But I was stubborn, and refused to make the payment that night. The next morning, before I was awake, the gates of the city opened, and 4 buyers came running out in search of flocks. They were very anxious and willing to pay high prices, because the city was threatened with siege, and food was not plentiful. The old farmer received nearly 3 times the price, at which he had offered me the flock. Thus the rare luck escaped him. Behold, a most unusual story, commented Arcad. Wisdom suggests making payment immediately, when we are convinced that our deal is wise, suggested a venerable saddle maker. If the deal is good, then you need protection against your own weaknesses, just as against any other man. We mortals are changeable. I should say that we are more apt to change our minds, when we are right, than when we are wrong. If we are wrong, we are very stubborn. If we are right, we are apt to hesitate, and let the opportunity slip. My first judgment is the best. However, I have always found it difficult to force myself to follow through with a good deal when it is done. Therefore, as a protection against my own weaknesses, I make a quick deposit. This saves me from regrets later, for good luck that should have been mine. Thank you. Again I would like to speak. The Syrian stood up once more. These tales are very much alike. Every time the opportunity flies for the same reason, every time it comes to procrastinator bringing good plan, every time they hesitate, they do not say, now is the best time, I do it quickly. How can men succeed in that way? Wise are your words, my friend, replied the buyer. Good luck fled procrastination in these 2 tales, however, this is not unusual. The spirit of procrastination is in all men. We desire riches, but how often when opportunity presents itself before us, that spirit of procrastination within drives us to delay our acceptance. Listening to it, we become our own worst enemies. In my younger days, I did not know that our friend from Syria enjoyed this long word. At first, I thought it was my own bad judgment, which made me lose many profitable trades. Later I attributed it to my stubborn disposition. Finally, I recognized what was a habit of unnecessary delay, where quick and decisive action was required. How I hated him when his true character was revealed. With the bitterness of a wild ass hitched to a cart, I freed myself from this enemy of my success. Thank you. I like to ask Mr. Merjan, said the Syrian. Spoke the Syrian. You wear fine clothes, not like those of a poor man. You speak like a successful man. Tell us, do you listen now when procrastination whispers in your ear? Like our friend, the buyer, I too had to recognize and overcome procrastination, replied the merchant. For me, it turned out to be an enemy always watching, and waiting to thwart my achievements. The story I related is but one of many similar instances I could tell, to show how I walked away from my opportunities. Once understood, it is not difficult to conquer. No man willingly allows that a thief should steal his grain, neither does any man willingly allow that an enemy should drive away his customers, and rob him of his profits. When I once recognized that I acted in this manner, I conquered my enemy with determination. Thus, every man must master his own spirit of procrastination, before he expects to partake of the rich treasures of Babylon. What do you say, Arcad? Because you are the richest man in Babylon, many proclaim you the most fortunate. Do you agree with me that no man can reach the fullness of success until he has completely crushed the spirit of procrastination within him? That is just as you say, admitted Arcad. During my long life, I have seen one generation after another advance along the paths of commerce, science, and learning, which lead to success in life. Opportunities came to all these men, some seized theirs, and advanced steadily towards the gratification of their deepest desires. But most of them hesitated, faltered, and lagged behind. Arcad turned to the weaver of the cloths. You suggested we debate about good luck. Let's hear what you think on the subject. I see good luck in a different light. I thought of it as something very desirable, which could happen to a man without effort on his part. Now I realize that such occurrences are not the kind of things which one can attract to oneself. From our discussion, I have learned that in order to attract good luck to oneself, it is necessary to seize opportunities. Therefore, in the future, I will strive to make the most of the opportunities that come my way. You understood well the truths set forth in our discussion, replied Arcad. Good luck, as we often see, follows opportunity, and seldom comes otherwise. Our friend, the merchant, would have found great luck, had he accepted the opportunity that the good goddess presented to him. Our friend the buyer, likewise, would have enjoyed good fortune, had he completed the purchase of the flock, and sold it at such a great profit. We have followed this discussion, to find a means of attracting good luck to us. I think we have found the way. Both tales illustrate how good luck follows opportunity. Herein lies a truth, that many similar tales of good luck, won or lost, could not change. The truth is this: good luck can be attracted by accepting opportunity. Those who are eager to seize opportunities for their betterment attract the interest of the good goddess. She is always eager to help those who please her. Men of action are the ones she likes the most. Action will lead you to the successes you desire. Men of action are favored by the goddess of good luck. The 5 laws of gold. A bag loaded with gold, or a clay tablet carved with words of wisdom. If you could choose, which would you prefer? In the flickering light from the desert bush fire, the tanned faces of the listeners glowed with interest. The gold, we want the gold, shouted the 27. Old Calabab smiled knowingly. Listen, he continued, raising his hand, listen to the wild dogs in the night, they howl and wail, because they are skinny with hunger. Yet, feed them, and what do? They fight and brag, then fight and strut some more, without thinking of the morning that is sure to come. So it is with the sons of men. If given a choice between gold and wisdom, how do they act? They ignore wisdom, and waste gold. The next day, they mourn because they have no more gold. Gold is reserved for those who know their laws and keep them. Calabab girded his white robe around his slender legs, for a cool night wind was blowing. You have served me faithfully on our long journey. Thou hast taken good care of my camels. Thou hast toiled without complaint through the hot desert sands. You have fought bravely against the thieves who sought to rob me of my goods. I will tell you tonight the story of the 5 golden laws, a story such as you have never heard before. Listen with deep attention to the words I speak. For if you grasp their meaning and heed them, in the future you will have plenty of gold." He paused impressively. Above, in a blue canopy, the stars were shining, in the crystalline skies of Babylon. Behind the group, loomed their faded tents, heavily parked, against possible desert storms. Beside the tents, there were bales of goods carefully stacked, and covered with skins. Nearby, the herd of camels stretched out on the sand, some chewing their oxen contentedly, others snoring in hoarse discord. "You have told us many good stories, Calabab," said the chief packer. "We hope your wisdom will guide us tomorrow, when our service with you comes to an end. I have told you of my adventures in strange and distant lands, but tonight I will tell you of the wisdom of Arkad, the rich sage." "Many of us have heard of him," acknowledged the chief of the packers, "for he was the richest man who ever lived in Babylon. He was the richest man, and that because he was wise in the ways of gold, such as no man had ever been before. Tonight I will speak of his great wisdom, as told to me by Nomaser, his son, many years ago in Nineveh. When I was but a boy, my master and I had stayed late into the night in Nomaser's palace. I had helped my master to bring large bundles of fine carpets, each of which was to be tested by Nomaser, until his choice of colors was satisfied. At last he was satisfied, and ordered us to sit with him, and drink a rare vintage odorous to the nostrils, and very warm to my stomach, for I was not accustomed to such a drink. Then, he told us this story, of the great wisdom of Arkad, his father, just as I will tell it to you. In Babylon, it is the custom, as you know, that the children of rich parents live with their parents, waiting to inherit the estate. Arkad did not approve of this custom, therefore, when Nomaser arrived at the man's estate, he sent for the young man and addressed him, Son, it is my wish that you succeed to my estate. However, you must first prove that you are capable of managing it wisely. Therefore, I wish you to go out into the world and prove your ability, both to acquire gold, and to make yourself respected among men. To get you off to a good start, I will give you two things of which I myself refused, when I began as a poor young man, to build up all my fortune. First, I give you this bag of gold. If you use it wisely, it will be the basis of your future success. Second, I give you this clay tablet, on which are carved the 5 golden laws. If you interpret them in your own actions, they will give you competence and security. 10 years from this day, return to your father's house, and give an account of yourself. If you prove worthy, I will make you heir to my goods, otherwise, I will give them to the priests, to be exchanged for my soul, the land consideration of the gods. So Nomaser departed, to make his own way, carrying his bag of gold and the clay tablet, carefully wrapped in silk cloth, his slave and the horses, on which they rode. The 10 years passed, and Nomaser, when he had agreed to returned to the house of his father, who gave a great banquet in his honor, to which he invited many friends and relatives. When the banquet was over, the father and mother showed themselves on their thrones on one side of the great hall, and Nomaser stood before them to give an account of himself, as he had promised his father. It was night, the hall was full of smoke coming from the wicks of the oil lamps, which illuminated it dimly. Slaves in white jackets and robes rhythmically fanned the humid air with long-stemmed palm leaves. A majestic dignity colored the scene. Nomaser's wife, and his 2 young children, along with friends and other family members, were seated on the carpets behind him, listening attentively. "My father," he began with deference, "I bow to your wisdom. 10 years ago, when I was at the gates of maturity, you asked me to go out, and become a man among men, instead of remaining a vassal of your fortune. You gave me generously of your gold, you gave me generously of your wisdom of gold. Alas, I must admit that the manipulation was disastrous. Indeed, it fled from my inexperienced hands, as a wild hare flees at the first opportunity, from the young man who captures it." The father smiled indulgently, and said to him, "My son, keep telling, your story interests me in all its details. I decided to go to Nineveh, as it was a growing city, and I thought I might find opportunities there. I joined a caravan, and among its members I made numerous friends. Among them were two well-spoken men, who had a most beautiful white horse, as swift as the wind. As we traveled, they told me in confidence that in Nineveh there was a rich man, who owned a horse so fast, that it had never been beaten. His owner believed that no horse alive could run with greater speed. And therefore, he bet any sum, however large, that his horse was faster than any other in Babylon. Compared with his horse, my friend said, he was no more than a clumsy ass, which could be easily beaten. They offered me, as a great favor, to allow me to join them in a wager, but I went along with the plan. Our horse was badly beaten, and I lost much of my gold. I later found out that it was a deceptive plan of these men, and that they were constantly traveling with caravans, looking for new victims. The man from Nineveh was their partner, and he shared with them the bets he won. This cunning deception taught me my first lesson to watch out for myself. Soon I met another equally bitter one. In the caravan was another young man, with whom I became quite friendly. He was the son of wealthy parents, and like me, was traveling to Nineveh, to find a suitable place. Soon after our arrival, he told me that a merchant had died, and that his store, with its rich goods and clientele, could be obtained at a paltry price. He said we would be equal partners, but first he must return to Babylon, to secure his gold. He persuaded me to buy the stock with my gold, agreeing that his would be used later, to carry out our enterprise. He long delayed the journey to Babylon, proving in the meantime, to be a reckless purchaser, and a foolish spender. I finally threw him out, but not before the business had deteriorated, to the point that we had only unsaleable goods, and no gold to buy other goods. I sacrificed what was left to an Israelite, for a pitiful sum. Soon followed, I tell you my father, some bitter days. I sought employment and found none, for I had no trade or training, which would enable me to earn. I sold my horses, sold my slave, sold my extra clothes, that I might have food and a place to sleep. But every day, the grim necessity crouched more and more. In those bitter days, I remembered your trust in me, my father. You had sent me to become a man, and this I was determined to accomplish. At that moment, I remembered the tablet you had given me, on which were carved the 5 golden laws. Then I carefully read your words of wisdom, and I realized that if I had sought wisdom first, my gold would not have been lost. I learned by heart each law, and decided that, when once again the goddess of good fortune smiled upon me, I would be guided by the wisdom of age, and not by the inexperience of youth. For the benefit of you, who are sitting here tonight, I will read the wisdom of my father, as engraved on the clay tablet, which he gave me 10 years ago. The 5 laws of gold. 1. Gold comes gladly and in increasing quantity, to any man, who puts not less than 1/10 of his earnings, to create wealth for his and his family's future. 2. Gold works with diligence and satisfaction, for the wise owner who finds it a profitable employment, multiplying like the flocks of the field. 3. Gold clings to the protection of the prudent owner, who invests it, under the advice of wise men in its management. 4. Gold escapes, to the man who invests it in business or purposes, with which he is not familiar, or which are not approved by experts in its custody. 5. Gold flees from the man, who wants to force it to impossible profits, or who follows the seductive advice of tricksters and schemers, or who entrusts it to his own inexperience, and to his romantic investment desires. These are the 5 laws of gold, as written by my father. He proclaimed them to be of greater value than gold itself, as I shall demonstrate by the continuation of my narrative. He returned to face his father. I have told you of the depth of poverty, and the despair to which my inexperience led me. However, there is no chain of disasters, which does not come to an end. Mine came, when I got employment leading a crew of slaves, who worked on the new outer wall of the city. Taking advantage of my knowledge of the first law of gold, I saved a copper from my first earnings, adding to it at every opportunity, until I had a piece of silver. It was a slow procedure, for one must also live. I spent reluctantly, I admit it, because I was determined to get back, before the 10 years were up, as much gold as you, my father, had given me. One day, the slave master, with whom I had become quite friendly, said to me, "You are a thrifty young man, who does not spend freely what he earns. You have gold in store that is not earned, don't you?" "That's right," I replied. "It is my greatest desire to accumulate gold, to replace that which my father gave me and which I have lost. It is a worthy ambition, I grant you. And do you know that the gold you have saved can work for you and earn more gold? Alas, my experience has been bitter. For my father's gold has fled from me, and I am very much afraid that mine will do the same. If you have confidence in me, I will give you a lesson in the profitable handling of gold," he replied. "Within a year, the outer wall will be complete and ready, for the great bronze gates to be built at each entrance, to protect the city from the enemies of the king. In all of Nineveh, there is not enough metal to make these gates, and the kingdom has thought to provide it. This is my plan: a group of us will gather our gold, and send a caravan to the copper and tin mines, which are far away, and bring the metal for the gates. When the king says, 'Make the great gates,' only we will be able to supply the metal, and he will pay a good price. If the king does not buy from us, we will still have the metal, which can be sold at a fair price." In his offer, I recognized an opportunity to fulfill the third law, and invest my savings, under the guidance of wise men. I was not disappointed, our common fund was a success, and my small stock of gold increased considerably by the transaction. In due course, I was accepted as a member of this same group, in other enterprises. They were wise men in the profitable management of gold. They discussed every plan presented with great care, before entering into it. They would not risk losing their capital, or tie it up in unprofitable investments, from which the gold could not be recovered. Such foolish things as horse racing, and the society into which I had entered with my inexperience, would have had little regard for them. They would have immediately pointed out their weaknesses. Through my association with these men, I learned how to invest gold safely, and in such a way that I could make a profit. As the years passed, my treasure increased more and more rapidly. I not only recovered what I had lost, but much more. Through my misfortunes, my trials and my successes, I have tested again and again the wisdom of the 5 laws of gold, my father, and I have proved their truthfulness in every test. To the one who does not know the 5 laws, the gold does not come often, and goes away quickly. But to him who abides by the 5 laws, the gold comes, and he works as their obedient slave." Nomacer stopped speaking, and gestured to a slave at the back of the room. The slave brought one at a time, 3 heavy leather bags. One of them Nomacer took, and placed it on the floor, before his father turned to address him. "You gave me a bag of gold, gold from Babylon, behold in its place, I give you back a bag of gold from Nineveh, of equal weight, and equal exchange, as you will all agree. You gave me a clay tablet with an inscription of wisdom, behold in its place, I return to you 2 bags of gold." Having said this, he took from the slave the other 2 bags, and in the same way, placed them on the ground before his father. "This I do to show you, my father, that I consider your wisdom much more valuable than your gold. However, who can measure in bags of gold the value of wisdom? Without wisdom, gold is quickly lost by those who have it, but with wisdom, gold can be secured by those who do not have it, as these 3 bags of gold prove. Indeed, it gives me the deepest satisfaction, my father, to stand before you, and say that thanks to your wisdom, I have been able to become rich and respected before men." The father put his hand with affection on the head of Nomacer. "You have learned your lessons well, and I am indeed fortunate to have a son, to whom I can entrust my riches." Calabab interrupted his story, and looked critically at his listeners. "What does this story of Nomacer mean to you?" he continued. "Who of you can go to your father or your wife's father, and give an account of the wise management of his earnings? What would these venerable men think if you said, 'I have traveled much, I have learned much, I have worked much and I have earned much. But unfortunately, I have little gold. Some of it I have spent wisely, some of it I have spent foolishly, and much of it I have lost unwisely'? Do you still think it is but an inconsistency of fate, that some men have much gold, and others have none? Then you are wrong. Men have a lot of gold, when they know the 5 laws of gold and comply with them. Because I learned these 5 laws in my youth, and put them into practice, I have become a rich merchant. It is not by some strange magic that I have accumulated my wealth. Wealth that comes quickly, goes the same way. Wealth that remains, to give enjoyment and satisfaction to its owner, comes gradually, because it is a child born of knowledge and persistent purpose. Gaining wealth is but a light burden to the thoughtful man. Bearing the burden steadily from year to year achieves the ultimate purpose. The 5 golden laws offer you a rich reward for their observance. Each of these 5 laws is rich in meaning, and lest you overlook them in the brevity of my narrative, I will repeat them now. I know them by heart, because in my youth I could see their value, and I would not be content to know them word for word. First law of gold. Gold comes gladly and in increasing quantity, to any man, who puts not less than 1/10 of his earnings, to create a patrimony for his future and that of his family. Any man, who keeps 1/10 of his earnings constantly, and invests it wisely, will surely create a valuable patrimony, which will provide him with income in the future, and will also guarantee the safety of his family, in case the gods call him to the world of darkness. This law always says, that gold comes with satisfaction to such a man. I can certify this in my own life. The more gold I accumulate, the more easily it comes to me in greater quantity. The gold I save earns more, as does yours, and its profits are greater. And this is the application of the first law. The second law of gold. Gold works with diligence and satisfaction, for the wise owner who finds it a profitable employment, multiplying like the flocks of the field. Gold, indeed, is a willing worker. It is always ready to multiply, when the opportunity presents itself. To every man who has a store of gold, there comes the opportunity to use it, in the most profitable way. As the years go by, it multiplies in a surprising manner. The third law of gold. Gold clings to the protection of the prudent owner, who invests it, under the advice of wise men in its management. Gold, indeed, clings to the cautious owner, just as it flees from the careless owner. The man who seeks the advice of men wise in the management of gold, soon learns not to endanger his treasure, but to preserve it safely, and to enjoy with satisfaction its constant increase. The fourth law of gold. Gold escapes from man, who invests it in business or purposes, with which he is not familiar, or which are not approved by the experts in its custody. To the man who has gold but is not expert in its management, there are many uses which seem very profitable, yet, too often, these are fraught with danger of loss. And if properly analyzed by wise men, they show little possibility of profit. Therefore, the inexperienced owner of gold, who trusts to his own judgment, and invests it in business or purposes, with which he is unfamiliar. He is one who very often finds his judgment imperfect, and pays with his treasure for his inexperience. Wise, indeed, is he who invests his treasures under the advice of men expert in the ways of gold. The fifth law of gold. Gold flees from the man who wants to force it to impossible profits, or who follows the seductive advice of tricksters and schemers, or who entrusts it to his own inexperience, and to his romantic desires of investment. To the new owner of the gold, always come fanciful proposals, which excite like adventure stories. These seem to endow his treasure with magical powers, which will allow him to obtain impossible profits. However, pay attention to the wise, because they really know the risks, which are hidden behind every plan, to obtain great wealth suddenly. Do not forget the rich men of Nineveh, who do not risk losing their capital, or tying it up in unprofitable investments. Here ends my story of the 5 laws of gold. In telling it, I have shared with you the secrets of my own success. However, they are not secrets, but truths that must first be learned, and then followed, by every man who wishes to stand out from the crowd. Like you, wild dogs, they must worry every day about food. Tomorrow we shall enter Babylon. Look, see the fire that burns eternally, over the temple of Bel. We are already in sight of the golden city. Tomorrow, each of you will have gold, the gold you have also earned for your faithful services. 10 years after tonight, what can be said of this gold? If there are men among you who, like Nomacer, will use their share of gold to start an estate of their own, and be from then on wisely guided by the wisdom of Arkad. 10 years from now it is a sure bet that, like Arkad's son, you will be rich and respected among men. Our wise acts accompany us through life, to please and help us. With the same certainty, our unwise acts follow us to torment us. Unfortunately, they cannot be forgotten. In the first row of the torments that follow us, are the memories, of the things we should have done, of the opportunities that presented themselves to us, and that we did not take advantage of. Rich are the treasures of Babylon, so rich, that no one can count their value in gold pieces. Every year they are richer and more valuable, just as the treasures of every land are a bounty, a rich reward awaiting men of purpose, who resolve to secure their fair share. In the strength of your own desires, there is a magical power. Guide this power, with your knowledge of the 5 laws of gold, and you will share the treasures of Babylon. The gold lender of Babylon. 50 pieces of gold. Never before had Rodden, the spearmaker of old Babylon, carried so much gold in his leather satchel. He went happily down the king's highway, from the palace of his most liberal majesty. The gold tinkled merrily, as the satchel at his belt swayed every step, the sweetest music he had ever heard. 50 gold pieces, all hers. He could hardly realize his good fortune. What's in those jingling records? He could buy anything he wanted, a big house, land, cattle, camels, horses, chariots, anything he could wish for. What should he give it to him? This afternoon, as he turned down the side street, in the direction of his sister's house, he could think of nothing he would rather own, than those same shiny, heavy gold pieces, to keep. One evening, a few days later, a perplexed Rodden entered the store of Maiden, the gold pawnbroker, and dealer in jewelry in rare fabrics. Without looking on the walls at the colorful items on display, he passed into the living room at the back. There he found the gentle thug, resting on a rug, and enjoying a meal, served by a black slave. "I would like to advise you, because I do not know what to do." Rodden stood with his feet apart, his hairy chest exposed through the open part of his leather jacket. The narrow, sallow face of Maiden smiled with a friendly greeting. "What indiscretion have you committed, to seek out the gold lender? Have you had bad luck at the gaming table, or have you been entangled by some gloating lady? I have known you for many years, but you have never asked me to help you with your problems." "No, I haven't. I'm not looking for gold, instead, I crave your wise counsel." "Hey, listen to what this man says, no one comes to the gold lender for advice. My ears must be deceiving me. They hear the truth, can it be so, Rodden? The spearman, he shows more cunning than all the others, for he comes to Maiden, not for gold, but for advice. Many men come to me for gold, to pay for their follies, but as for advice, they never ask for it. Yet who is more capable of advice than the moneylender of gold, to whom many men in distress come. You shall eat with me, Rawdon. He continued. You will be my guest for tonight. He ordered the black slave, Andal, prepare a cloth for my friend Rawdon, the spearman who comes to ask advice. He will be my guest of honor. Bring him plenty of food, and my largest cup. Choose well the best wine, so that you will have satisfaction in drinking it. Now, tell me what troubles you. It is the king's gift, the king's gift. The king gave you a gift and gives you trouble. What kind of gift? As he was very pleased with the design I presented to him, for a new point on his royal guard spears, he gave me 50 gold pieces, and now I find myself very perplexed. Every hour that the sun travels across the sky, I am begged by those who want to share it with me. That is natural. There are more men who desire gold than have it, and they would wish that one who gets it easily, would divide it. But you can't say no, isn't your will as strong as your fist? To many I can say no, but sometimes it would be easier to say yes. Can one refuse to share with his sister, to whom he is deeply devoted? Surely, your own sister, she will not want to deprive you of enjoying your bounty, but it is for the sake of Araman, her husband, whom she wishes to see as a rich merchant. She feels that he has never had a chance, and begs me to lend him this gold, that he may become a prosperous merchant, and return it to me with his profits. My friend, continued Maiden, it is a worthy subject you bring up. Gold brings to its possessor responsibility and a change of position before his fellows. It brings fear of losing it, or having it taken away with many deceptions. It brings a sense of power and ability to do good. Also, it brings opportunities whereby your very good intentions may bring you difficulties. Did you hear about the farmer of Nineveh, who could understand the language of animals? I do not know, because it is not the kind of story which men would like to tell in the forge of the bronze caster. I will tell it to you, because you must know that in lending and borrowing, there is something more than the passing of gold, from the hands of one to the hands of another. This farmer, who understood what the animals were saying, stayed every evening in the farmyard, to listen to their words. One afternoon he heard the ox complaining to the donkey about the harshness of his lot. I work pulling the plow from morning till night, no matter how hot the day is, no matter how tired my legs are, no matter how the bow rubs my neck, even so I must work. But you're a creature of leisure, you're stuck with a colorful blanket, and you do nothing else, but carry our master wherever he wants to go. When he goes nowhere, you rest, and eat green grass all day long. Now, the donkey, despite his vicious heels, was a good companion and sympathized with the ox. My good friend, he replied, you work very hard, and I would like to help you to alleviate your lot. Therefore, I will tell you how you can have a day of rest. In the morning, when the slave comes to take you to the plow, lie down on the ground and shout a lot, so that he will tell you that you are sick, and cannot work. So the ox followed the advice of the ass, and the next morning, the slave came back to the farmer, and told him that the ox was sick, and could not pull the plow. Then said the farmer, hitch the mules to the plow, because we must continue plowing. All that day the donkey, who had only pretended to help his friend, was forced to do the work of the ox. When night came and he was released from the plow, his heart was bitter, his legs tired and his neck sore, where the bough had grazed him. The farmer stayed in the corral to listen. The ox began first, you are my good friend. Thanks to your wise advice, I have enjoyed a day of rest. And the donkey replied, I am like many others with a simple heart, who begin to help a friend, and end up doing the task for him. From now on, you yourself will take care of your own plow. For I have heard the master tell the slave, to send for the butcher, if you are ill again. I wish he would, because you are a lazy fellow. From then on, they never spoke to each other again, which put an end to their friendship. Can you tell the moral of this story, Rawdon? It's a good story, Rawdon replied, but I don't see the moral. I didn't think you would, but it's there, and besides it's simple. Just this, if you want to help your friend, do it in such a way, that you don't bring your friend's burdens upon yourself. I hadn't thought of that, it's a wise moral. I don't want to take on the burdens of my sister's husband, but tell me, do you lend to many? Don't borrowers pay back? Bully smiled, with the smile of one who has a soul rich in experiences. Could a loan be well done, if the borrower cannot pay it back? Must not the lender be wise and judge carefully, whether his gold can serve a useful purpose for the borrower, and return to him, or whether it will be wasted, by someone unable to use it wisely, and leave him without his treasure, leaving the borrower with a debt he cannot repay? I will show the tokens in my chest, and let them tell you some of their stories. He entered the room, carrying a chest as long as his arm, covered with red pigskin, and adorned with bronze patterns. He placed it on the floor, and squatted before it, with both hands on the lid. From each person to whom I lend, I demand a token for my token chest, which will remain there until they return the loan. When they return it, I return it to them, but if they never return it, it will always remind me of someone, who was not faithful to my trust. The safest loans, my chip box tells me, are for those whose possessions are worth more than they want. They own land, jewelry, camels, or other things that could be sold, to repay the loan. Some of the tokens I have been given, are jewelry of more value than the loan. Others are promises that if the loan is not repaid as agreed, I will be given a certain liquidation of assets. In this type of loans I am assured, that the gold will be returned with the corresponding rent, since the loan is based on the property. In another class are those who have the ability to earn, are those who, like you, work or serve and are paid, have income and are honest, and do not suffer any misfortune. I know that they can also repay the gold I lend them, and the income to which I am entitled. These loans are based on human effort. Others are those who have neither property, nor assured earning capacity. Life is hard, and there will always be some who cannot adapt to it. Unfortunately, the loans I make to them, even if they are no bigger than a penny, my chip box may censure me for years to come. Unless they are guaranteed by good friends of the borrower, who know him honorably. Bully released the clasp, and opened the lid. Rawdon leaned forward impatiently. At the top of the chest, there was a bronze necklace on a scarlet cloth. Maiden took the piece, and caressed it lovingly. This will forever remain in my token chest, because its owner has passed into great obscurity. I treasure his token in his memory, because he was my good friend. We traded together very successfully, until from the East he brought a woman to marry, beautiful, but not like our women, a dazzling creature. He spent his gold lavishly, to satisfy his desires. He came to me in distress, when his gold disappeared. I advised him. I told him I would help him, to master his own affairs again. He swore by the sign of the great bull that he would, but it was not so. In a fight, he stabbed him in the heart, which he dared to pierce. And she? Rawdon asked. Yes, of course, this was her. He picked up the scarlet cloth. With bitter remorse, he threw himself into the Euphrates. These two loans will never be repaid. The chest tells you, Rawdon, that humans in the midst of great emotions, are not safe risks for the gold lender. Here this is different. He reached for a ring carved from ox bone. This belongs to a farmer. He bought his women's rugs. The locusts came, and they had no food. I helped him, and when the new harvest came, he paid me. Later he came again, and told me about some strange goats in a distant land, described by a traveler. They had long hair, so fine and soft, that they could weave more beautiful carpets, than those that had been seen in Babylon. He wanted a flock, but he had no money, so I lent him gold to make the journey, and bring goats. Now his flock has started, and next year I will surprise the lords of Babylon, with the most expensive carpets they have been lucky enough to buy. Soon I must return his ring. He insists on paying back the money quickly. Do some borrowers do that? Rawdon asked. That's right, they borrow for the purpose of being paid back. It seems that way to me, but if they borrow for their indiscretions, I warn you to be cautious, if you want to get your gold back in your hand. Women do like my good friend, joked Maiden. I'm still much younger than you, replied Rawdon. I admit it, but this time you suspect romance where there is none. The mistress of this is fat and wrinkled, and she talks so much and says so little, that it drives me crazy. They used to have a lot of money, and were good customers, but bad times came to them. She has a son, who she wants to turn into a merchant. So he came to me and borrowed gold, to become a partner of the owner of a caravan, who travels with his camels bartering in one city, what he buys in another. This man proved to be a knave, for he left the poor boy in a distant city, penniless and friendless, retiring early while the young man slept. Perhaps when this young man becomes a man, then he will pay it off. Until then I get no income for the loan, just a lot of lip service. But I admit that the jewelry is worth the loan. Has this lady asked you for advice on the suitability of the loan? Otherwise. She had imagined this son of hers, as a rich and powerful man of Babylon. To suggest otherwise, was to enrage her. A just rebuke I had. I knew the risk to this inexperienced boy, but as she offered security, I could not refuse her. This, continued Maiden, waving a piece of cargo rope tied in a knot, belongs to Nevator, the camel trader. When he wants to buy a herd larger than his funds, he brings me this knot, and I lend him according to his needs. He is a wise merchant. I trust his good judgment, and I can lend to him freely. Many other merchants in Babylon have my trust, because of his honorable behavior. His 92 tokens come and go frequently in my token box. Good merchants are an asset to our city, and it benefits me to help them, so that trade remains prosperous. Bully picked up a turquoise-carved scarab, and threw it dismissively to the ground. A bug from Egypt. The boy who owns it doesn't care if I ever get my gold back. When I reproach him, he replies, how can I give it back if bad fate follows me? You have so much more. What do I do in this case? The token is from his father, a worthy man of little means, who pawned his lands and his flock, to back his son's enterprises. The young man succeeded at first, and then became excited by the idea of obtaining great wealth. His knowledge was immature, and his enterprises collapsed. Youth is ambitious, wants to take shortcuts to wealth, and the desirable things it represents. To quickly secure wealth, youth often take reckless loans. Youth who have never had experience, may not realize that hopeless debt is like a deep pit, into which one can quickly descend, and from which one can struggle in vain, for many days. It is a pit of sorrows and regrets, where the brightness of the sun is clouded, and the night is made unhappy by restless sleep. However, I do not discourage gold lending, I encourage it, I recommend it if it is for a wise purpose. I myself achieved my first real success as a trader, with borrowed gold. However, what should the lender do in such a case? The young man is desperate and gets nothing, he is discouraged, he makes no effort to pay. My heart revolts against the fact, to deprive the father of his land and his cattle. You tell me many things I am interested to hear, Rawdon ventured, but I do not hear any answer to my question. Should I lend my 50 gold pieces to my sister's husband? They mean a lot to me. Your sister is an excellent woman, whom I esteem very highly. If her husband came to borrow 50 gold pieces from me, I would ask him what he would use them for. If he replied that he wished to be a merchant like me, and to trade in jewelry and rich furniture, I would say to him, what knowledge do you have of the ways of commerce? Do you know where to buy at the lowest cost? Do you know where you can sell at a fair price? Could you say yes to these questions? No, I couldn't, Rawdon admitted. You have helped me a great deal in the manufacture of spears, and you have helped some in the stores. Then I would tell him that his purpose is not wise. Merchants should learn their trade. His ambition, though worthy, is not practical, and I would not lend him gold. But supposing I could say yes, I have helped many a merchant. How to travel to Smyrna, and buy cheaply, the carpets woven by the housewives. I also know many of the rich of Babylon, to whom I can sell them at a great profit. I would then say to him, your purpose is wise, and your ambition honorable. I will gladly lend you the 50 gold pieces, if you will give me the assurance that you will return them to me. But he would say, I have no other assurance than that I am an honest man, and I will pay you back the loan. Then I would reply, I treasure every piece of gold very much. If thieves were to take them from you while you were traveling to Smyrna, or steal your carpets on your return, then you would not have the means to repay me, and my gold would have disappeared. You see, Rawdon, gold is the money lender's commodity. It is easy to lend, but if given unwisely, it is hard to get it back. The wise lender does not want the risk of the enterprise, but the guarantee of a safe repayment. It is good to help those who are in trouble. It is good to help those whom fate has hit hard. It is well to help those who are beginning, so that they may progress, and become valuable citizens, but the help must be given wisely. Lest, like the farmer's ass, in our desire to help, we only have upon us the burden that belongs to another. Again, I have strayed from your question, Rawdon, but listen to my answer. Keep your 50 gold pieces. Whatever you earn from your work, and whatever is teed as a reward, is yours, and no one can force you to part with it, unless it is your wish. If you want to lend it to earn more gold, then lend with caution, and in many places. I don't like idle gold, and even less excess risk. How many years have you worked as a spearman? 3 altogether. How many, besides the king's gift, have you saved? 3 gold pieces. Every year that you have worked, have you denied yourself good things, in order to save from your earnings 1 gold piece? It is as you say. Then, could you save in 50 years of work, 50 gold pieces by your self-denial? A lifetime of work would be. Do you think your sister will want to jeopardize the savings of 50 years of labor over the crucible of bronze, for her husband to experience being a merchant? Not if I speak with your words. Then go to her and say, 3 years I have worked every day, except fast days, from morning till night, and I have denied myself many things that my heart longs for. For every year of toil and self-denial, I have to show a piece of gold. You are my favorite sister, and I wish your husband to engage in business in which he will prosper greatly. If you will present me with a plan, which will seem wise and possible to my friend Bully, then I will gladly lend you my savings of a whole year, that you may have the opportunity to show that you can succeed. Do it, I say. And if he has within him the soul to succeed, he may prove it. If he fails, he will owe you no more than he can ever hope to repay. I am a lender of gold, because I possess more gold than I can use, in my own trade. I wish my surplus gold to work for others, and so earn more gold. I do not want to run the risk of losing my gold, because I have worked hard, and have refused on quite a few occasions to get it. Therefore, I will no longer lend any of it, where I am not sure that it is safe, and will be returned to me. Nor will I lend where I am not convinced that its proceeds will be promptly paid to me. I have told you, Rawdon, some of the secrets of my token chest. From them, you can understand the weakness of men, and their eagerness to borrow, those which they have sure means to repay. From this, you can see how often, their great hopes of the great profits, which they might get if they had gold, are but false hopes, as they have not the ability, or the training to deliver. You, Rawdon, have gold now that you should use, to earn more gold for yourself. You are about to become, like me, a gold lender. If you keep your treasure safely, it will yield you generous profits, and will be a rich source of pleasure and profit all your days. But if you let it slip away, it will be a source of constant pain and regret, as long as your memory lasts. What do you want most of this gold in your purse? He asked. I wish to keep it safe. Wisely said, replied Maiden, approvingly. Your first desire is safety. Do you think that in the custody of your sister's husband, it would really be safe from possible loss? I fear not, for he is not wise in the custody of gold. Then, do not be carried away, by foolish feelings of obligation, to entrust your treasure to anyone. If you want to help your family or your friends, look for other means, other than risking the loss of your treasure. Do not forget that gold escapes unexpectedly, from those who do not know how to keep it. It is the same thing to waste your treasure in extravagances, than to let others lose it for you. What is the next thing you desire after the safety of this treasure of yours? That I may gain more gold. Again you speak wisely. It is to be done, let it earn and grow the borrowed gold. Wisely, it may even double with your earnings, before a man like you grows old. If you risk losing it, you risk losing also all that it would earn. Therefore, do not be carried away by the fantastic schemes of impractical men, who think they see the truth of forcing your gold for unusual gains. Great schemes are the creations of inexperienced dreamers, in the safe and reliable laws of commerce. Be conservative in what you expect to earn, in order to keep and enjoy your treasure. To rent it with the promise of unusual returns, is to invite loss. Seek to associate with names and firms, whose success is assured, so that your treasure will earn handsomely under their skillful use, and be safely guarded, by their wisdom and experience. Thus shalt thou avoid the misfortunes, which pursue most of the sons of men, to whom the gods see fit to entrust gold. Many uses will tempt you, you will be given many tips, you will be offered numerous opportunities, to obtain great benefits. The stories in my token box should warn you, before you let any piece of gold out of your purse, so you can be sure that you have a sure way to get it back. If my advice appeals to you, come back again. I am happy to give it to you. When you go, read this that I have carved for you under the lid of my token box. It applies equally to the owner and the lender. Better a little caution than a lot of regret.
As you conclude this audiobook journey, remember that financial success is not merely about acquiring wealth, but about building a life of abundance and security. May the principles shared by George S. Clason guide you as you navigate the complexities of financial management. Embrace these timeless lessons, apply them diligently, and watch as your dreams of prosperity become a reality. Farewell, and may your journey to financial success be filled with abundance, growth, and fulfillment.